knowing your why is incredible. Having a reason to go through something difficult changes our capacity to handle difficulty and adversity. And for me, this little story that changed it all was about wind and about the power of wind and a tree. Welcome. My name is Andrea Brown. This is Thrival Now, a YouTube channel and podcast where I'm committed to helping you go from survival to thrival in your finances so that you can be more, do more, and give more. I'm not generally a rule breaker, but sometimes I break rules and it backfires. So I'm sitting on top of the mountains in North Carolina at a place called Blowing Rock, and I just went behind the enemy lines. No, I just went behind the no trespassing zone to get a better view for my video. And I got cut short when management saw that I was outside the trespassing zone. So anyway, I'm now in bounds and have a vantage point, but not quite as clear as I would have liked. But here I am sitting in a place called Blowing Rock, North Carolina. Had some business to take care of over the mountains in North Carolina from my home in Tennessee, and it's just a quick 24-hour trip. I'm headed home, and I wanted to come through this area. I haven't been to Blowing Rock before. Thought I would check it out, and got some great views on the trail, but could not find a private place to do a little video. So anyway, I just had a little run-in with the management, but sometimes that happens, and even when you play by the rules, sometimes it's good to push those limits, I guess, in life, right? Doesn't matter how old we are. We'd like to think there's exceptions for being who we are. But anyway, the reason I turned the camera on today was because here, standing at Blowing Rock, looking at the views, I don't have time to share, but I will leave the beautiful story of the Indian warrior and Indian maiden that fell in love here and why this town was named Blowing Rock. I'll share that if you stick through to the end. But really, what I wanted to share today, I was really inspired by this fact that Blowing Rock is defined, or has been defined, by the fact that it blows so hard here that the snow blows upward. And things are topsy-turvy and upside down in that sense. And this place, just thinking about wind and adversity and wind blowing so hard that, snow doesn't fall from the sky but is blown upward, really reminded me of a story in my life that changed how I interpreted the experiences that I had dealt with and the difficulty that I faced as a young person. And I honestly was just thinking about the power of adversity in our lives and how reality, we can't always change the circumstances we're in, but we can change our reality by changing the perception of our experience. And, years ago, I dealt with a lot of rejection. I was kind of an outsider growing up and really was ostracized in a lot of ways, and just, man, it was really difficult, and I had a lot of challenges through that, and I had a lot of questions for why I was dealing with it, and what was wrong with me, or just all those identity things you wrestle with, especially as a teenager. And I was given a really wonderful gift when I think at graduation. One of my aunts, I think, gave it to me, and it just was a compilation of all these inspirational stories, and in that book, I remember one particular story, and it so radically changed my perception of the reality that I had experienced up to that point in my life around isolation and being an outsider, that it took something that was such a pain point and made it changed my experience so profoundly that I embraced that pain with purpose. And knowing your why is incredible. Having a reason to go through something difficult changes our capacity to handle difficulty and adversity. And for me, this little story that changed it all was about wind and about the power of wind and a tree. And so that's why I was reminded coming here to Blowing Rock about this story. And as the story went, to the best of my knowledge, it was about how shipbuilders in the old days used to, let me rewind. A mast on a ship was one of the most important and vital pieces of a ship and a sailing ship. And so shipbuilders were very particular about the masts that they selected for these ships. And it wasn't necessarily the strongest tree that was best, because strength often brought a brittleness, and those in incredible storms on the ocean, those masts would break in these storms. And so the shipbuilders discovered that the best masts for the ships were trees that had not just strength, but they had a flexibility to them. And so what they used to do, and of course I cannot tell, actually I haven't researched this out, so I don't know if it's true or just one of those inspirational kind of stories that sticks with us because of the metaphor of life, but it was profound enough that it rocked me to the core, and it's been something that I've held on to since. So maybe it doesn't matter if it actually is true or not, but bear with me. This story is that these shipbuilders would go to the most prominent point on a hill or a summit overlooking the ocean, and they would find a young sapling, and they would cut down all the other trees around that sapling. And that sapling had to grow for years and years, decades and decades, to maturity. And in its growth to maturity, that tree had no other trees to buffet it from the storms and being assailed by the wind from the ocean. And so this tree would grow, and not only have deep roots and have the strength to stand in the storm, but it had the flexibility to bend in that storm and not break. And then when the tree came to maturity, that tree would be cut down by the shipbuilders, and that tree would become the mast on these great ships that used to sail around the world. And I have read stories of ships that have, well, there's many stories of tales of ships that have gone down, but to hear of the storms and the ships in the old days that sailed around the Cape Horn and the Cape of Good Hope, two of the most dangerous waters in the world, around the summit of South America and not the summit, but around the southernmost point of South America and the southernmost point of Africa are some of the most dangerous and deadly waters in the world. And, for me, hearing that story, it really, it caused me to look at the fact that I had been isolated and really had no close friends through my younger years that had lasted for a real length of time. And, I knew I could make friends wherever I went. It wasn't that. It just seemed that in my hometown, nothing I could do could change the situation. I just, in that season of my life, did not have relationships that lasted and were close. What was amazing, though, is after graduation, as I traveled, I count myself now as one of the people most rich in all the world for the friends that I have, and just have been so blessed by friendship and the richness of that. And so it's not something that has lasted. It was definitely something I've overcome in my life, but I had to fight for that. I had to fight through that adversity and being alone. And so whether you're, I don't know, or if you're in business, I don't know, in your finances or your health or other relationships like me, where you're facing adversity. And again, I think we're all facing adversity in some area of life generally on an ongoing basis. And if you aren't, then it's just a matter of time till it happens. But again, it's not the circumstances that you face that define you. It's how you interpret them. It's the reality that you experience, and your experience is determined by your perception and what you perceive in that moment. And so I give you this little story as an example of what it is to change your perception and begin to see purpose in the adversity you're facing, because when you have purpose and you have a reason why, and you can imagine something bigger. And in my case, I was drawing on a spiritual component, and in the sense that that there was a creator and God in my life had also affected these circumstances to a degree that I didn't have those friendships for those years. And so was there a reason that that had happened in my life? And as I came, I didn't know that at the beginning, but as I came out of that season, being able to look back or reflect even in that kind of changing season, that there was purpose and meaning in it, helped me to maintain even that fortitude through to seeing that change in my life. And it has helped me in all these other areas that when I have faced adversity, looking at that in a different way, looking at my circumstances as, instead of being debilitated and a woe is me attitude or a victim mentality, going, what if this is really what is making me stronger through this? And in fact, if you stick around for any length of time, you'll discover that, one of the things that one of my core life messages that I have been living for 15 plus years is that your biggest problem is your greatest opportunity. And it's something that I talk about, that I live, that I feel like I'm preaching constantly to myself and sharing with other people and living out, and to the point that it's agonizing at times in the difficult situations that I'm facing, that I'm reminding my own self of everything that I have told everyone else around me, that, okay, hold up the mirror, and whatever this is, it's an opportunity to overcome and not be torn down in these circumstances, not be debilitated, not be destroyed. When in years preceding this, for most of my life, I was complaining about my problems. I was avoiding my problems. I was praying to God to get rid of my problems, or waiting for someone else to deal with my problems. And I have since come to really recognize that, again, going back to what I said at the very beginning, that your success in life is determined by your ability to face or deal with adversity. And so I want you to succeed. I hope that you succeed in every area of life. And that is, why I'm showing up, why I do these videos. So I hope to hear great stories in the future and hear how some of these concepts have maybe touched your life or changed your thinking and affected, just your ability to endure in difficult circumstances and see success on the other side.
The legend of the Blowing Rock. It is said that a Chickasaw chieftain, fearful of a white man's admiration for his lovely daughter, journeyed far from the plains to bring her to the Blowing Rock and the care of a squaw mother. One day the maiden, daydreaming on the craggy cliff, spied a Cherokee brave wandering in the wilderness far below and playfully shot an arrow in his direction. The flirtation worked because soon he appeared before her wigwam, courted her with songs of his land, and they became lovers, wandering the pathless woodlands and along the crystal streams. One day a strange reddening of the sky brought the brave and the maiden to the Blowing Rock. To him it was a sign of trouble, commanding his return to his tribe in the plains. With the maiden's entreaties not to leave her, the brave, torn by conflict of duty and heart, leaped from the rock into the wilderness far below. The grief-stricken maiden prayed daily to the Great Spirit until one evening, with a reddening sky, a gust of wind blew her lover back onto the rock and into her arms. From that day a perpetual wind has blown up onto the rock from the valley below. For people of other days at least, this was explanation enough for the Blowing Rock's mysterious winds causing even the snow to fall upside down.